technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
All right, so let's see where I was. Here we go. Okay, now if we're going to do AJAX programming on the client side or on the server side and the client side, we're going to need targets on the server side. What are we actually going to call from the client? For example, we could call AJAX handler files. A lot of developers, in ASP.NET may not even take advantage of these special page handlers or these handlers that you can create, the .AJAX files. In your website, you always have the ability, where's my Solution Explorer window? There we go. To create yourself a handler, just right-click the website or web application project, choose Add New Item, and choose to create a page handler. Right? So, for example, it would be an AJAX file here. Client library, page handler is what we usually call them. It's jumping right at me here. Here we go, a generic handler. When you go ahead and add one of these to your site, this could be a target for your particular AJAX calls to the server. Keep in mind that a handler is much lighter weight than a full-blown web page. A web page, of course, has to handle all those events, recreate all the controls on the page, and then send all that HTML back to the client to be rendered. But instead with a handler, you basically have one method, process request, and working with the response object, you choose exactly what should be emitted back to the client. And this might be a more efficient way for your AJAX calls to go into the server side from the client. Handler.ASHX. Alternatively, something else you may want to take advantage of is a page method. Now, page method looks a lot like a web service. If you've ever created a web service in ASP.NET, a web service is typically an ASMX file, and then you expose some public methods that have the web method attribute placed above them. Well, with a page method, you do this in your code behind file. For example, let's take a look at page method example right here. On the design view here, you notice that I've got getTime, which is a standard input button, and I've got WC getTime. So I've got these two different buttons here. This top one here is just an HTML control, and you notice on the HTML control it just says getTime, and it's going to call this method on the JavaScript called alertTime. That's this guy right here. It's going to go ahead and call this method, and you notice we actually go to the page methods class and call this static method getTime. This is what's declared in the code behind file. Also notice we specify a couple of other JavaScript functions, timeComplete and timeError. These guys are going to run depending on success or failure with calling this page method. So I'm calling getTime here. Let me show you that. Right here I have that method called getTime. Now this is a very important requirement with page methods. It must be declared as static, and of course you must have this web method attribute placed directly above it. Also note that your static methods do not have access to any of the other controls that might be on the page, or specifically their state, because those are instance level variables, if you will. For example, when a button is added to a form, it's added as a protected control, added to the control collection of the entire page. With a page method, you're not dealing with state. So here we're just going ahead and returning the current time back as a string. Now back over on the page, whether it be a standard HTML button or a web control button on client click, notice how we're using the on client click event to do the same thing, it's going to go ahead and run and do a very simple alert with the result. Of course, if there's an error, it's going to display that instead. Now there is one additional requirement if you ever use page methods, and this is an easy one to overlook. Remember the script manager? Anytime we're doing any form of AJAX programming, we have to add that one and only one script manager on our page. We do have to set this enable page methods attribute equal to true. Once you enable this, then you can go ahead and call a page method in your code behind file. This may be a more efficient way of just exposing a few simple methods to your AJAX client-side code. They can go ahead and call this method in your code behind file without having to add a whole nother ASMX file with a bunch of web methods inside of it. If you just need to do some very simple work on the client side, get some state information or whatever, then you can go ahead and call your static method in your code behind file. Okay. Something else to consider, hey, web services or WCF services, this is another way that we can go ahead and call on the server side from our AJAX clients. These are just different types of targets that we can call. Or REST. REST is especially important. It stands for Representation State Transfer. Instead of constantly calling a web service which bangs against your database, maybe you actually want to have that data already prepared and waiting on the server, and then based on what's in the actual query string, what's in the URL, you can automatically send the data back as raw text. REST, of course, gives you higher performance on the server side and on the client side because it doesn't have to generate all that data at once, right in the middle of the request and the response process. It does it all at once, saving a ton of time. And something that's important to note is that in .NET 4.0, or even now in .NET 3.5, if you have Service Pack 1 installed, we have these things in the global.asax file. Let me open up that. I don't think I have it in this one here. Where we can actually take in the requests and based on their location, we can go ahead and send them to a certain area. And I guess what I should do is just show you that in an MVC application. This is Visual Studio 2010, by the way. And if I go ahead and choose to create a brand new project or website, actually it has to be a project for MVC. Here we go, MVC2 web application. I'll click OK. Create a unit test for it. You'll notice that I have a global.asax, and this is something that was added with .NET 3.5 Service Pack 1. The ability to go ahead and choose routing. Routing is the capability of looking at the actual query as it's coming in and mapping it to a specific class. And with routing, you can take advantage, of course, of creating a REST solution. Routing being able to see, oh, you're looking for this bits of information, go ahead and send them back this information that's on the server. Okay. Other server-side targets, keep in mind you might be dealing with other technologies altogether. One of the things that I've taught in the past when we were working with AJAX is that the server side doesn't matter for AJAX as much as the client side, unless you're specifically doing ASP.NET AJAX programming.
For more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.